The Atlanta courtroom buzzed faintly as Judge Harold Vance sentenced 19-year-old Kiana Brooks to 5 years for a petty shoplifting charge, his smirk cutting deeper than his words. "Stick to sweeping floors, girl," he sneered, sparking. Laughter from the benches. Kiana stood rigid, braids quivering, tears spilling as guards led her away. Upstairs, Chief Judge Leonard Brooks watched the live stream, his fist shattering his desk's glass in silent fury. His daughter's fate hung in the balance, but what would his next move unleash? Before we dive in, let us know where you're watching from. If you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe for more gripping tales of reckoning. Kiana Brooks moved through the sticky heat of Atlanta's west side with the kind of focus that turned chaos into purpose, her sneakers scuffing the cracked pavement as she balanced a tray of diner cups in her mind and a dream of law school in her heart. At 19, she was a wiry spark of energy, her braids swinging with each step, her hazel eyes sharp behind thick glasses she'd taped together after a long shift. She carried a small notebook everywhere, its pages crammed with legal arguments. She'd scribbled during breaks at Joe's Greasy Spoon, where she slung plates of fries and catfish for $6 an hour plus tips. Her father, Leonard Brooks, was a name whispered in reverent tones around the courthouse, a black man who'd climbed to chief judge through grit and brilliance. But Kiana kept that quiet, determined to carve her own path without his shadow. She'd aced her first semester at Fulton Community College, her professors praising her knack for dissecting cases, and she'd already mapped out her transfer to Georgia State's law program, every step a brick in the life she'd built herself. Today, though, the sun hung low and mean, baking the asphalt into a shimmering haze, and her shift had left her bone-tired, her apron still smelling of grease, as she ducked into a boutique on Peachtree Street to kill time before her bus. The air inside was cool, sharp with lavender from a diffuser, and the racks glittered with silk scarves and overpriced dresses she'd never wear. She ran her fingers over a $20 scarf, a soft purple thing that caught the light like a bruise against her skin, imagining it as a gift for her mom's birthday next week. Her phone buzzed, a text from her best friend Tasha asking if she'd grabbed dinner yet, and in that split second of distraction, she tucked the scarf into her bag absent-mindedly, her mind already on the next table's order she'd forgotten to ring up. She turned to leave, the bell above the door jingling, when a bony hand clamped her elbow, spinning her around. The store manager, a pinched white woman with lipstick bleeding into the lines around her mouth, glared down at her, eyes narrowing to slits. "I saw that," she hissed, her voice a venomous drawl. "Typical of your kind, thinking you can just take what's not yours." Kiana's stomach dropped, her hands flying up as she stammered, "Wait, no, it was an accident. I didn't mean to." But the woman was already dialing her phone, her free hand jabbing a manicured nail into Kiana's chest. "Save it for the cops, thief," she snapped, and within minutes, 2 officers burst through the door, their boots thudding against the hardwood floor, radios crackling with static. They didn't ask questions, didn't listen as Kiana fumbled to explain, just grabbed her arms with enough force to make her wince, her notebook tumbling to the ground, pages splaying open like a broken wing. One cop, a burly guy with a buzz cut and a sneer, twisted her wrists into cuffs, the metal biting into her skin as he muttered, "Should have stayed in your lane, girl." Outside, a crowd gathered under the flickering streetlights, phones up recording as the second cop shoved her toward the squad car, her pleas drowned by their jeers, someone yelling, "Lock her up, she deserves it." Her glasses fogged with humiliated tears, but she held her chin high, refusing to let them see her break. The ride to the station was a blur of sirens and the sour stink of sweat in the back seat, her mind racing, trying to piece together how a $20 scarf had spiraled into this nightmare. At the precinct, they booked her fast, fingerprints smudging ink onto her trembling hands, her mugshot flashing under harsh lights that made her look like a stranger to herself. By morning, she stood in a cavernous courtroom on the 5th floor of the Fulton County Courthouse, its high ceilings swallowing sound, the air thick with the scent of wax polish and stale coffee. Dark wooden benches stretched in rigid rows, packed with bored spectators, and a few reporters tapping on laptops, while an American flag drooped beside the judge's bench, its stripes faded from years of dust. Kiana adjusted her borrowed blazer, too big and itchy against her diner-stained shirt, her braids pulled back tight to look serious, her notebook clutched like a lifeline. She'd spent the night in a holding cell, scribbling her defense on a napkin with a stubby pencil, piecing together traffic cam angles and timestamps to prove she'd been at work all day, only stopping at the boutique by chance. Her heart thudded against her ribs as the bailiff called her case, Docket 2357, State versus Kiana Brooks, petty theft, his voice flat and mechanical, echoing off the marble walls. Judge Harold Vance loomed above her, a hulking figure. In black robes, his steel-grey hair swept back, his jowls quivering as he chewed a mint he didn't bother to hide. At 62, he was a courthouse legend, feared for his iron rulings and rumored to keep a flask under his desk, his pale eyes glinting with the kind of contempt that didn't need words. He barely glanced at the file as Kiana stepped to the podium, her voice steady despite the knot in her throat. Your Honor, I'm here to contest this charge. I have evidence showing I didn't intend to steal anything. It was a mistake. I've got timestamps from my shift and, she began, flipping open her notebook. But Vance cut her off with a lazy wave, his lips curling into a smirk. Name for the record, he barked, his pen scratching idly on a legal pad, not even looking up. Kiana Brooks, Your Honor, she said, swallowing hard. Now he lifted his head, his gaze raking over her, lingering on her braids, her glasses, her brown skin, a frown creasing his forehead like she was a puzzle he didn't care to solve. Go on, he grunted, leaning back in his chair, the wood creaking under his bulk. She took a breath, laying out her case. On August 3rd, I was working at Joe's Greasy Spoon from noon to 6. I've got receipts and a co-worker's statement. I only stopped at the boutique after. The scarf was a mistake. I didn't mean to walk out with it. Here's the timeline. Pulling out her crumpled napkin notes, her hands steady, despite the sweat prickling her palms. Vance snorted, loud enough to ripple chuckles through the room, cutting her off again. Miss Brooks, this isn't some school project. Law's not a game for little girls with scribbles, he said, his voice dripping with condescension, tossing her napkin aside without a glance. Maybe stick to something easier, like cleaning tables, huh? The courtroom erupted in laughter, a sharp, jagged sound that stabbed into her chest, her face burning as she gripped the podium, nails digging into the wood. A clerk in the back snickered, whispering to a deputy, and Kiana caught the words, dumb kid, slicing through the noise. Your Honor, if you'd just look at the evidence, she tried again, but Vance slammed his gavel, the crack splitting the air like a gunshot. I've heard enough. Guilty as charged, 5 years next case, he declared, already flipping to the next file, dismissing her like she was dust on his robe. Kiana froze, her breath catching, her carefully built defense collapsing into nothing, the 5 years stretching out like a death sentence in her mind, her dreams of law school, of proving herself crushed under that gavel's weight. Guards grabbed her arms, pulling her back as she stumbled, her notebook slipping to the floor, pages scattering across the worn carpet. The room blurred, eyes on her, some pitying, some mocking, all watching her fall. 3 floors up, in a corner office with a view of the city skyline, Chief Judge Leonard Brooks sat behind a mahogany desk, his broad shoulders tense, his dark eyes locked on a laptop screen streaming the courtroom feed. At 55, he was a towering man, his graying hair cropped close, his suit impeccable, every line of his face carved from decades of fighting a system that never wanted him to win. He'd built his career on precision, on outsmarting men like Vance, but now his hands clenched into fists, veins bulging as he watched his daughter humiliated, sentenced, destroyed. The gavel's echo hit him like a punch, and his fist slammed. Down, glass cracking under the blow, a spiderweb splintering across his desk. His breath heaved, rage simmering into something cold and sharp. Vance had no idea who he'd just crossed, and Leonard swore then, in that fractured silence, this was only the beginning. Kiana Brooks sat shivering in a sweltering holding cell beneath the Fulton County Courthouse, the air thick with mildew and the sour tang of unwashed bodies. Her wrists chafed raw from cuffs that dug into her skin like teeth. The concrete bench bit into her thighs. Her borrowed blazer crumpled beside her, and the flickering bulb overhead cast jagged shadows across the graffiti-scarred walls, words like freedom scratched out by desperate fingernails. She hugged her knees, replaying Judge Harold Vance's smirk, his gavel's crack, the 5-year sentence that had stolen her future in a heartbeat, her dreams of law school now a cruel joke echoing in her ears. How could a $20 scarf twist into this nightmare? What kind of justice let a man like Vance wield power unchecked? Her stomach growled, but the guards had ignored her for hours, their boots clomping past without a glance, one muttering, "Troublemaker," loud enough to sting. She pressed her forehead to her knees, fighting tears, when the heavy steel door groaned open, and a silhouette filled the frame, broad and unyielding, the faint scent of cedar cologne cutting through the stench. Leonard Brooks stormed in, his chief judge badge glinting under the dim light, his jaw set like granite, his dark eyes blazing with a fury that made the air crackle. The guards snapped to attention, their smirks vanishing as he barked, "Release her now," his voice a low thunder that rattled the bars. "This is an outrage," Vance overstepped. "I want her out." The younger guard fumbled with his keys, stammering, "Sir, we need paperwork." But Leonard stepped closer, towering. Over him, his presence a wall of authority. "You need my daughter locked up for a scarf. You need a racist judge's ego trip to ruin her life. Move." The keys clinked, the cuffs fell away, and Kiana stumbled to her feet, her legs shaky but her heart surging as she threw herself into her father's arms, his suit jacket rough against her cheek, his heartbeat a steady drum against her ear. "Dad," she whispered, relief flooding her. "I thought I was done." He squeezed her tight, his voice a growl. "Not while I'm breathing." And for a moment, in that dank cell, she believed she'd escaped the abyss, that her father's power had yanked her back from the edge. They walked out together, her arm looped through his, the humid Atlanta night wrapping around them like a blanket, the courthouse looming behind like a smug giant. She breathed free air, thinking maybe this was the end, maybe justice could bend after all. Could a father's love really outmatch a system's hate? Would Vance just slink away, tail between his legs? Back at their modest brick house on Ashby Street, Kiana sank into the couch, the cushions sagging under her weight, her braids spilling over her shoulders as she sipped water from a chipped glass, the coolness soothing her parched throat. Leonard paced the living room, his polished shoes scuffing the worn rug. His phone pressed to his ear as he called in favors, his voice clipped and urgent. "Check the docket. I want that ruling reviewed." She watched him, her rock her shield, believing the storm had passed. But across town, in a dimly lit office with cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling, Judge Harold Vance sat hunched over his desk, his silver hair glinting under a brass lamp. His ruddy face twisted into a scowl as he scrolled through security logs. Word had trickled up, whispers from a clerk about Leonard's intervention, and Vance's lips curled into a snarl, his fingers drumming the wood with a rhythm that matched his rising pulse. "Brooks thinks he can flex on me," he muttered. To himself, his voice a gravelly rasp, the mint in his mouth long gone, replaced by the bitter taste of defiance. He picked up his phone, dialing a precinct captain he'd golfed with for decades, a man who owed him favors piled higher than the courthouse itself. "I want her back in custody," Vance said, his tone icy. "File an assault charge, say she swung at an officer during the arrest, make it stick." The captain hesitated. "That's thin, Harold, the footage," but Vance cut him off. "Doctor it, crop the end, show her struggling, I don't care, just do it." He hung up, leaning back in his creaking chair, a smirk creeping across his face as he pictured Kiana's smug little victory crumbling to dust. Who did she think she was, challenging him? Did she really believe her daddy's title would save her from his wrath? Within hours, the trap sprang shut. Kiana was sprawled on her porch steps, the night air buzzing with crickets, her notebook open on her lap as she sketched a timeline to rebuild her case, her glasses fogged from the humidity. When headlights sliced through the darkness, tires screeching as 2 squad cars roared up the street. She stood, heart lurching as 4 officers leapt out, their faces hard, their hands on holsters, shouting, "Kiana Brooks, you're under arrest." Neighbors peeked through curtains, phones flashing as they recorded, a woman across the street, yelling, "Leave her alone." But the cops didn't flinch. "Assaulting an officer," the buzz-cut cop from the boutique spat, grabbing her arm, twisting it behind her back as she cried, "I didn't touch anyone, check the video." He shoved her against the railing, the wood splintering under her weight. her glasses clattering to the ground, lenses cracking as another cop kicked them aside. "Tell it to the judge," he sneered, cuffing her so tight her wrists bled, dragging her to the car as she thrashed, screaming, "This is wrong, you know it's wrong." The crowd grew, some shouting, some filming, a kid on a bike yelling, "She's innocent." But the cops slammed the door, her face pressed to the window, eyes wide with terror as they peeled away, sirens blaring into the night. Leonard burst out the front door, his tie askew, his phone dropping as he saw the taillights vanish. His roar of Kiana swallowed by the chaos, his fists clenched as neighbors swarmed him, voices overlapping. "They took her, Mr. Brooks, just now." He ran to his car, keys shaking in his hand. But the street was empty, his daughter gone again, the brief taste of freedom snatched away like a cruel mirage. Back in his chambers, Vance watched the arrest stream live on a burner phone, a grainy feed from a cop's body cam. His smirk widening into a full grin, his jowls quivering with satisfaction as Kiana's cries crackled through the speaker. "Teach that family a lesson," he muttered, pouring a shot of bourbon from a hidden flask, the amber liquid glinting in the lamplight as he raised it in a mock toast. "To the little girl who thought she could play in my world." He downed. The burn in his throat matching the fire in his chest, already plotting his next move. Certain Leonard's pull couldn't touch him this time. How far would he go to bury her? Could Leonard fight a machine that chewed up his own blood? 3 floors up, Leonard stumbled into his office, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, his breath ragged as he yanked open his laptop, pulling up the precinct's arrest log, his fingers trembling as Kiana's name flashed in red. Assault. On an officer detained. His power, his badge, his years of climbing the ladder, all useless against Vance's venom, and he sank into his chair, the cracked glass desk reflecting his fractured hope, his mind racing as he realized this wasn't just a battle, it was war. What chance did they have against a man who'd twist the truth itself? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think Vance's racism should cost him everything. Hit like if Kiana's fight fires you up, and subscribe to see this reckoning unfold. Can Leonard outsmart a judge who's already rewriting the rules, or will Kiana pay an even steeper price in the next twist? Kiana Brooks woke to the buzz of her phone vibrating against the hardwood floor of her Ashby Street bedroom, the screen glowing with notifications that multiplied like roaches in the dark, her name trending on every local news site in Atlanta. She rubbed sleep from her eyes, her wrist still bruised from cuffs, and squinted at the headlines. Violent thug Kiana Brooks attacks cop. Judge's daughter caught in crime spree. Each word a punch to her gut, twisting her brief. Taste of freedom into a public execution. She clicked a video. Grainy body cam footage from her arrest, but it was butchered. Cropped to show her thrashing as cops pinned her to the porch. Her cries for justice edited into snarls, making her look feral, dangerous. Nothing like the girl who'd hugged her dad hours ago. Her stomach churned as comments flooded in. Typical trash. Lock her up for good. The venom seeping through the screen, her face plastered across thumbnails like a wanted poster. She stumbled to the window, peering through blinds, and saw a news van parked across the street, its antenna piercing the dawn sky, a reporter in a cheap suit jabbering into a mic. Kiana Brooks, a menace unmasked. How had it spiraled this? Fast? Who was pulling these strings? Downstairs, Leonard Brooks hunched over the kitchen table, his coffee cold, his laptop open to the same footage, his jaw tight enough to crack teeth as he watched his daughter's name dragged through the mud. He'd barely slept, his eyes bloodshot, his tie dangling loose, the weight of his failure pressing his shoulders into a slump. Kiana shuffled in, her braids a tangled mess, her voice small. "Dad, what's happening?" He looked up, his face a mask of guilt. "Vance," he spat. "He leaked this, turned it into a circus." She sank into a chair, the wood creaking under her, her hands trembling as she scrolled her phone again, finding a white supremacist blog had picked it up. Her address now pinned in bold. "Time to clean up the streets, starting here." Her breath hitched. "They know where we live?" Leonard nodded, grim. "We're not safe." Before he could say more, a brick shattered the living room window, glass exploding across the rug, a note tied to it flapping in the breeze. "Go back where you came from," Kiana screamed, diving to the floor, her heart slamming against her ribs as Leonard yanked her behind the couch, his arm a steel band around her, his voice a fierce whisper, "Stay down!" Outside, a mob swelled, 20, then 30 people, their faces twisted with hate, fists clutching bats and bottles, chanting, "Thug! Thug!" as they circled the house, headlights flashing like predator eyes in the pre-dawn gloom. She peeked, through a crack in the blinds, her blood freezing as a man in a red cap torched a rag, hurling it at the porch, flames licking the steps before fizzling out on the damp wood. "They're gonna kill us," she gasped. But Leonard was already on his phone, dialing a lawyer he'd known since law school, Aisha Grant, her voice cutting through the static. "I'm on my way, Leonard. Hold tight." Kiana curled into a ball, the roar of the crowd. A tidal wave crashing over her, every slur a blade slicing deeper, her dreams of proving herself now a beacon for their rage. Could they survive this night? Aisha arrived an hour later, her sleek sedan screeching to a stop as she leapt out, a wiry woman in her 40s, her short locks bouncing, her briefcase a weapon as she shoved through the thinning mob, cops, finally, dispersing them with lazy shouts. Inside, she spread papers across the table, her sharp eyes scanning the doctored footage Leonard had pulled from a precinct source. "This is garbage." They cut the audio, flipped the angle. "It's a setup." Kiana sat beside her, her cracked glasses perched on her nose, hope flickering as Aisha muttered, "We can appeal this. Get it thrown out." Leonard paced, his fists clenched. "Vance won't stop, Aisha. He's got the system in his pocket." She smirked, fierce. "Not all of it. I know a judge who hates his guts. We've got a shot." Days later, they stood in a packed courtroom on the 8th floor, the air buzzing with tension, the benches overflowing with reporters and activists. Their whispers a low hum beneath the fluorescent lights. Judge Marla Evans presided, a stern black woman with silver streaks in her hair, her gaze piercing as Aisha laid out the case. "Your Honor, this footage is manipulated. Timestamps don't match. Audio's missing. It's a clear frame-up." She played the original clip, snatched from a whistleblower cop, showing Kiana pleading, not fighting, the cop's shove unprovoked, Vance's lies unraveling in real time. The room gasped, murmurs rippling as Evans leaned forward, her pen tapping the bench. "Compelling, Ms. Grant, proceed," Kiana testified, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "I didn't assault anyone. I was begging them to listen," and Evans nodded, her ruling swift. "Assault charge dismissed, evidence inadmissible, Ms. Brooks. You're free to go." Relief crashed over Kiana, her knees buckling as Leonard caught her, his arms strong around her shoulders, a rare smile breaking through his stoic mask. "We did it, baby girl." She grinned, the weight lifting, believing justice had finally tipped her way, the crowd outside cheering as they left, signs waving, "Free Kiana." Could this be the end of Vance's grip? Back home, she collapsed on the couch, exhaustion pulling her under, thinking the storm had broken, her future hers. Again. But across town, Vance stewed in his chambers, the bourbon bottle half empty, his tie a crumpled heap on the floor, his phone buzzing with alerts of the dismissal, his smug victory torched by a judge he couldn't control. He slammed the desk, wood splintering, his growl a beast unleashed. "They think they've won." He dialed a precinct lackey, a greasy cop named Rawls, his voice a hiss. "Plant drugs in her car tonight, coke, enough for 20 years, I want her buried." Rawls hesitated. "That's risky, Judge," but Vance snarled, "Do it, or you're done." Hours later, as Kiana slept, sirens wailed again, lights flashing through her blinds, cops storming her driveway, kicking in her car door, a baggie of white powder found under the seat, glinting in their flashlights. She jolted awake, stumbling to the window, her scream roar as they pounded the front door. "Open up, Brooks, you're under arrest." Leonard raced downstairs, his shout lost in the chaos as they dragged her out, barefoot, in pajamas, her wrists cuffed again, tighter this time, blood trickling down her fingers as they shoved her into the squad car, her eyes locking with his, wide with betrayal. "Dad, help." The cop smirked. Big haul, 20 years easy, and the door slammed, tires squealing as they tore off. Leonard sank to his knees on the porch, the night swallowing his daughter's cries. His power useless once more, the cheers from the courtroom a distant echo against this new nightmare. Vance watched from his office, a live feed from Rawls's phone. Kiana's terror a sweet symphony to his ears, his chuckle dark as he poured another drink. "Not so smart now, are you?" He leaned back, savoring the chaos, whispering to the empty room, "She'll never crawl out of this, not this time." His cronies nodded over a speakerphone. "Good play, Harold. She's finished." And he grinned, certain he'd crushed her for good. The Brooks family, nothing but ash under. His heel, had he finally broken them beyond repair? Kiana Brooks hunched in a corner of a gritty county jail cell, the air heavy with the stench of rust and despair, her bare feet numb against the icy concrete, her pajamas torn from the rough arrest, now stained with sweat, and the faint red of her wrist wounds. The walls loomed grey and pockmarked, smeared with grime from countless forgotten souls, and the bunk above her creaked as a wiry inmate snored, her raspy breaths a grim lullaby. Kiana's cracked glasses hung crooked on her nose, one lens spider-webbed, blurring the world into a jagged haze, her braids matted against her scalp, sticky with fear. Guards patrolled the corridor, their boots thudding like war drums. There, voices cutting through the bars. "Hey, judge's pet hungry?" One sneered, tossing an empty tray past her cell, the metal clanging as it skidded across the floor, a cruel taunt since they'd refused her food for 2 days straight. Her stomach twisted, a hollow ache, but worse was the weight of the new charge, 20 years for cocaine possession, a lie planted by Vance's dirty cop Rawls. The baggie waved in her face during booking like a trophy. "Found this in your car, princess," his grin a slash of malice. How could a system she'd dreamed of joining turn so viciously against her? What chance did innocence have when power rewrote the rules? Across Atlanta, in the shadowed marble halls of the Fulton County Courthouse, Leonard Brooks stormed into Judge Harold Vance's chambers, the oak door banging against the wall, his suit rumpled, his badge a dull gleam against his chest. Vance lounged behind his desk, a bourbon glass sweating in his hand, the amber liquid catching the lamplight as he smirked, his silver hair slicked back, his jowls quivering with smug satisfaction. "You've got some nerve, Brooks," Vance drawled, swirling his drink. "Barging in here like you own the place." Leonard slammed a fist on the desk, papers scattering, his voice a controlled roar. "You framed my daughter, you racist pig. I'll expose you, drag you through every court in Georgia." Vance leaned back, his chair groaning, his laugh a wet rasp. "Expose me? I've got the judicial board in my pocket, old friend. They'll bury your complaint faster than you can file it. Go ahead and try." Leonard's eyes narrowed, his breath heaving. "You think you're untouchable?" Vance sipped his bourbon, slow and deliberate. "I know I am. Your little girl's learning her place, and you'll learn yours." Leonard spun on his heel, storming out, the echo of Vance's chuckle chasing him down the hall, a sound that coiled in his gut like poison. Could one man's hate really outweigh a lifetime of justice? Back home, Aisha Grant sat cross-legged on the living room floor, her laptop balanced on a stack of law books, her fingers flying across the keys as she dug into Vance's past, her locks pulled into a tight bun, her brow furrowed with focus. Leonard paced behind her, the rug worn thin under his steps, his phone buzzing with ignored calls from courthouse allies too scared to help. "Found something," Aisha said, her voice sharp, spinning the screen toward him. "Vance's sentencing. Records, look at this. Dozens of black defendants, minor crimes, maximum penalties, 3 years for jaywalking, 5 for loitering. It's a pattern. He's a one-man prison pipeline." Leonard leaned in, his pulse quickening as he scanned the numbers. Names like Jamal Tate, 16, 10 years for trespassing, Tanisha Wells, 18, 8 for shoplifting, a litany of stolen futures, each line a dagger of realization. "This is gold," he muttered. "We can use this." Aisha nodded. "Already sent it to my friend at the Atlanta Journal. Protests are brewing. We'll force their hand." By noon, the story broke. Headlines screaming, "Judge Vance's racist reign exposed," and the streets outside the courthouse erupted, hundreds marching with signs, "Justice for Kiana," "End the bias," their chants a rolling thunder. That shook the windows. fists raised against the humid sky. News vans swarmed, cameras catching the chaos, and inside her cell, Kiana heard the faint roar, a guard grumbling, "Your fan club's here," as he tossed her a stale bread roll, her first food in 48 hours. She clutched it, hope flickering, thinking maybe the tide was turning, maybe the world cared. Would the crowd's fury free her from this hell? Hours later, the pressure worked. A harried warden shuffled in, keys jangling. "Bail's posted. You're out, don't thank me." His scowl sour as he unlocked the door, Leonard waiting in the hall, his arms open, pulling her into a hug that smelled of cedar and relief. "We've got traction, baby girl. You're coming home." She clung. To him, her legs wobbly, believing the nightmare might finally lift, the protests a shield against Vance's claws. They drove back in silence, the city a blur of lights and horns. Kiana's head resting on the window, her breath fogging the glass, safety so close she could taste it. But Vance wasn't done, not by a long shot, his mind a churning pit of spite. As he sat in his chambers, the protest chants filtering through the walls, his bourbon bottle empty, his face a mask of rage. He dialed Rawls again, his voice a hiss. "She's out. Fix that." And Rawls, sweating in his precinct locker room, nodded. "Got it, boss." That night, as Kiana slept in her own bed, the jail's memory still clawing at her dreams, a guard slipped into the records room, a syringe glinting in his hand, Vance's orders clear. "Poison her water. Make it look natural. She's a liability." He'd bribed the man with cash from a slush fund, $1,000 to enter, and the guard had waited, slipping the dose into a jug meant for her cell before her release, a fail-safe Vance had planned days ago. Kiana had drunk it during her last hour inside, a sip to soothe her dry throat, unaware of the toxin seeping into her veins. Now, at home, she jolted awake, her chest seizing, her vision swimming as she collapsed to the floor, convulsing, foam bubbling at her lips, her scream a choked gasp that woke Leonard. He bolted in, dropping to his knees. "Kiana, no!" His hands shaking as he dialed 911, her body thrashing, her eyes rolling back, the room spinning into chaos. Paramedics crashed through the door, their shouts a jumble as they pumped her stomach, adrenaline surging through needles, her pulse flickering like a dying flame. Leonard knelt beside her, tears streaking his face, his voice breaking, "Stay with me, baby, please." As they loaded her onto a stretcher, sirens wailing into the night, the hospital a blur of white coats and beeping machines. She survived, barely waking in a sterile bed, tubes snaking from her arms, her father's hand gripping hers, his suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow with dread. "You're okay. You're okay," a mantra he repeated to himself, as much as her. Doctors confirmed it, poison, traces in her blood, a near-fatal dose, and Leonard's gaze hardened. Vance did this. His whisper a vow, the protests outside now a distant hum against the storm brewing in his chest. Kiana blinked up at him, weak but alive. "He won't stop, will he?" And Leonard shook his head. The truth a weight neither could shed. Vance's reach a noose tightening around them both. How much more could they take? Drop a 1 in the comments if you think Vance deserves to rot for this. Smash like. If Kiana's survival fuels your fire, and subscribe to catch every twist of this fight. What happens when a father's rage meets a killer's cunning? Can Leonard strike back before Vance finishes them off? Kiana Brooks lay in a sterile hospital bed, the beep of monitors a steady pulse against the hum of fluorescent lights, her skin clammy under a thin gown, her braids splayed across the pillow like dark rivers, tubes snaked from her arms, dripping saline to flush the poison Judge Harold Vance had slipped into her jail water, her body still trembling from the near-death grip of his latest attack, her cracked glasses fogged with shallow breaths. Leonard. Brooks sat beside her, his suit jacket slung over the chair, his broad hands clasped tight, knuckles white as he watched her chest rise and fall, each breath a victory he'd almost lost. The room smelled of antiseptic and fear, the window framing a grey Atlanta skyline, the protests from days ago now a faint echo beyond the glass. Kiana's eyes fluttered open, meeting his, her voice a rasp. "I'm still here, Dad." And he squeezed her hand, his throat tight. "You're a fighter, always have been." She nodded, weak but defiant, the fire in her chest reigniting despite the ache. He tried to kill me. We can't let him win. Leonard's jaw clenched, his gaze steel, we won't. And in that moment they forged a pact, a vow to bury Vance no matter the cost. Days later she staggered out of the hospital, her legs shaky, leaning on Leonard as they faced a swarm of reporters, cameras flashing like gunfire, mics thrust forward. "Kiana, how do you feel?" She straightened, her voice cutting through, the noise angry, ready to fight, and the crowd cheered, a wave of support washing over her, signs bobbing, "Justice now!" Aisha Grant met them at home, her laptop already open on the kitchen table, coffee brewing as she mapped their next move, her locks tied back, her eyes fierce. "We sue him. Misconduct. Attempted murder. We've got enough to start." Kiana sank into a chair, her hands steadying as she gripped a mug, the warmth seeping into her palms. "Let's do it. I want him gone." They filed the suit within hours, a blistering complaint accusing Vance of systemic bias and orchestrating her, poisoning every word, a blade aimed at his throat. Aisha dug deeper, chasing whispers from courthouse insiders, her phone buzzing with tips until she hit pay dirt. A nervous clerk named Timms, a skinny kid with acne scars and shaky hands, who met her in a dim parking garage off Peachtree Street, his voice a whisper, "I've got something big." He slid her a USB drive, his eyes darting. "Vance bragged about framing black kids, recorded it, thought I'd erased it, but I kept a copy." Aisha plugged it into her laptop right there, the audio crackling through, Vance's voice a smug growl. "They're all the same, lock 'em up, teach 'em who's boss, Brooks girl's just the latest." His laugh a wet slap against the silence. Kiana listened, her fists balling, rage boiling over as Leonard muttered, "That's our smoking gun." Aisha grinned, fierce. "This ends him." They leaked it to every outlet in Atlanta, the tape hitting the airwaves like a bomb, Vance's words looping on news channels, "Lock 'em up." His arrogance a noose tightening around his own neck. Social media exploded, hashtags trending, "Vance must fall," "Justice for Kiana." The audio shared thousands of times, a viral wildfire that burned through his reputation. Protests swelled again, bigger now, spilling from the courthouse steps into the streets, horns blaring, voices roaring, 1,000 strong demanding his head. The state couldn't ignore it, the governor's office buckling under the pressure, and by week's end, a press release flashed across screens. Judge Harold. Vance suspended pending investigation into misconduct allegations. The words a sweet hymn to Kiana's ears. She stood at a rally outside City Hall, the sun blazing down, her borrowed blazer crisp against her frame. Her voice amplified through a megaphone. "We're winning! They can't silence us!" The crowd erupted, fists pumping, a sea of faces. Black, brown, white, united in fury, hailing her as a hero, her name a chant that echoed off the buildings. Leonard watched from the edge, pride swelling in his chest, whispering to Aisha, "She's unstoppable." And for the first time in weeks, Kiana believed it, the weight of jail, poison and shame lifting, her future shimmering on the horizon, law school not a dream, but a promise she'd seize. She hugged supporters, their hands clapping her back, their cheers a balm, thinking Vance's empire was crumbling, justice finally hers. But Vance wasn't trembling, not yet, holed up in a swanky Buckhead condo owned by a crony, his bourbon, glass clinking with ice, his silver hair mussed but his smirk intact as he watched the rally on TV, the chants a dull buzz through triple-pane windows. He scoffed. "Unstoppable? We'll see." His voice a low rumble as he dialed a number from memory. A crooked senator named Grayson, a rail-thin man with a drawl and a Rolodex of favors. "They've got me on the ropes, Grayson. Fix it." The senator chuckled over the line. "Relax, Harold. I've got the board chair on speed dial. Investigation's dead by morning. You'll be back in robes before they blink." Vance leaned back, his chair creaking, relief curling his lips. "Good, now hit her harder. I want her broken." Grayson paused. "What's the play?" Vance's eyes glinted. "Her college. Get her expelled. Criminal records enough. Make it stick." By dawn, the suspension lifted, a terse statement citing insufficient evidence. Vance reinstated with a slap on the wrist, his allies on the judicial board shrugging off the tape as contextual. the protests ignored, the system snapping back like a rubber band. Kiana woke to a different nightmare, an email from Fulton Community College. Due to recent criminal behavior, your enrollment is terminated, effective immediately. The words a gut punch that stole her breath, her scholarship, her credits, her future torched in a single stroke. She stared at the screen, her hands shaking, the rally's cheers a cruel memory as she whispered, "No, no, no." Tears spilling down her cheeks, the room spinning as Leonard burst in. "What's wrong?" She shoved the laptop at him. Her voice breaking. "They took it all, Dad, everything I worked for," and he read it, his face crumpling, rage and helplessness warring in his eyes. Vance, that bastard. She sank to the floor, knees buckling, her dreams ash in her mouth. "I thought we beat him." And Leonard knelt beside her, his arm heavy around her. "We'll fight this." But his words felt hollow, the system's weight crushing them, both. Across town, Vance strutted back into the courthouse, his robes billowing, his jowls quivering with a grin as clerks averted their eyes, whispers trailing him like shadows. He's back, untouchable. He settled into his chambers, pouring a fresh bourbon, the ice clinking as he toasted the empty room. Checkmate, Brooks, his laugh a dark rumble, plotting his next move, certain Kiana's spirit was shattered, her father's power a joke against his machine. Leonard stood in their living room, staring at the cracked TV screen where Vance's reinstatement played on loop, his fists clenched, his breath ragged. "This isn't over," he growled, turning to Kiana, her eyes red but hardening. "He wants a war, he'll get one." She nodded, wiping her face, the rally's fire flickering back to life in her chest. "I'm not done." And they locked eyes, a silent vow to rise again, even as Vance's shadow loomed larger, his victory, a taunt they couldn't ignore. Kiana Brooks slumped on the sagging couch in her Ashby Street living room, the air thick with the stale scent of defeat, her cracked glasses fogged with tears she couldn't stop, her braids a chaotic spill over her shoulders as she stared at the eviction notice trembling in her hands. The college expulsion had gutted her, stripping her scholarship and dreams of law school. But now the landlord, spooked by the media storm, wanted them out. "Too much trouble," the note read, a final shove into the abyss. Her phone buzzed, with notifications, headlines twisting her pain into spectacle. Judge's daughter falls from Graysky, and she hurled it across the room, the screen cracking against the wall, her scream raw. "This is all your fault, Dad." Leonard Brooks stood frozen in the doorway, his suit rumpled, his broad frame sagging, his dark eyes hollow as her words hit like shrapnel. "Kiana, I tried." His voice a broken whisper, but she leapt up, her fists clenched. "Tried. You." "Let him win, you promised me justice." She paced, her sneakers scuffing the worn rug, her breath ragged. "You're the chief judge. You were supposed to protect me, not watch me drown." How could a father's power crumble so fast? What good was his badge if it couldn't shield her from Vance's hate? Leonard sank into a chair, his hands rubbing his face, the lines deepening. "I underestimated him, baby girl, I'm sorry." But she shook her head. "Sorry doesn't fix this, I'm done here," and stormed upstairs, slamming her bedroom door, the frame rattling as she packed a duffel bag, stuffing clothes and her battered notebook, her resolve hardening. "I can't stay where I'm just a target." She fled to Tasha's cramped apartment across town, a dingy walk-up on Edgewood Avenue. The walls thin, the air sour with cigarette smoke, Tasha's couch her new refuge. "You can crash here, girl," her friend said, but Kiana barely nodded, her spirit fraying, blaming Leonard for every blow. Could trust survive this betrayal? Meanwhile, Leonard sat alone in the empty house, the silence a weight pressing his chest, his coffee cold as he opened his laptop, diving into Vance's past, his fingers trembling over the keys, desperate for a weapon. He dug through old court records, dusty files from 20 years back, until he found it. A bribery scandal buried deep, Vance caught taking cash from a developer to sway a zoning case, hushed up by a greased senator named Grayson. Leonard's pulse quickened. "Got you," he muttered, printing the evidence, the pages crisp with promise as he drove to Grayson's mansion in Buckhead, the sprawling estate lit by floodlights, its iron gates gleaming like a fortress. He pounded the door, Grayson answering in a silk robe, his thin face smirking. "Brooks, slumming it?" Leonard thrust the papers forward. "You covered this up. I'll expose you both." But Grayson laughed, a sharp bark. "Expose me? I'll—" "Very you first," and slammed the door, already dialing his press contact. By morning, headlines screamed, "Chief Judge Leonard Brooks, corrupt black tyrant," a smear claiming he'd rigged cases for decades. The bribery story flipped to paint him as the villain, Grayson's spin a masterstroke. Protests shifted, turning on Leonard, pickets sprouting outside the courthouse. "Resign, Brooks," scrawled on cardboard, rocks pelting his office windows, glass shattering as clerks ducked, his allies scattering like roaches in daylight. How could truth twist into this lie? Back at Tasha's, Kiana scrolled the news, her stomach sinking as her father's name burned in disgrace, her anger faltering. "They're destroying him too," she whispered, but Tasha shrugged. "He's tough, he'll handle it." Her eyes glinting with something Kiana missed, a flicker of greed. Hours later, Tasha slipped out, meeting a tabloid reporter in a dim alley, pocketing cash as she sold Kiana's location. "She's at my place, get the scoop." Her betrayal, a knife Kiana never saw coming. That night, as Kiana slept on the lumpy couch, a shadow moved outside, a hitman hired by Vance, his gloved hand clutching a silenced pistol, the barrel glinting under a street lamp as he peered through the window, spotting her curled form. He fired, the glass exploding inward, the bullet grazing her arm, a hot sear of pain jolting her awake, blood soaking her sleeve as she rolled to the floor, screaming, "Tasha, help!" But Tasha was gone, the apartment empty. Her friends, footsteps long faded. Kiana scrambled up, clutching her arm, the sting blinding as she stumbled out the back door, bare feet slapping wet pavement, her breath a panicked rasp, the hitman's boots pounding behind her, another shot splintering, a dumpster as she ducked, terror clawing her throat. She ran blind, weaving through alleys, her blood dripping a trail, until she reached a gas station, its neon flickering, collapsing against the counter. "Call the cops." The clerk fumbled the phone, dialing as she sank down, her vision swimming. The hitman vanishing into the night, his mission botched but his threat a live wire. Police swarmed, lights flashing, and Leonard arrived, shoving through, his face ashen as he saw her. "Kiana." She fell into his arms, blood staining his shirt, her voice a sob. "I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have left." And he held her tight. "You're safe now, that's all that matters." Their rift mending in the chaos, her arm throbbing but her heart steadying, Tasha's betrayal a fresh wound they'd faced together. Across town, Vance lounged in his condo, a cigar smouldering between his fingers. The TV muted on Leonard's smeared face, his chuckle a dark ripple as Rawls called, "She got away, boss. Grazed her, but she's alive." Vance's smirk faded, his jowls tightening. "Useless, all of you." Slamming the phone down, his mind racing. "They're tougher than I thought." His plot to ruin them thickening. The hit a warning shot in a war he'd escalate. Leonard drove Kiana to a motel, her arm bandaged, her eyes hard as she clutched her notebook. "He's trying to kill us, Dad." And he nodded. "I know. We fight back. Harder." Their bond reforged, a united front against a monster who reveled in their pain. Vance's shadow stretched longer, his glee of venom seeping through the city, his next move a guillotine poised to drop. Drop a 1 in the comments if you think Tasha's betrayal cuts deepest, hit like if Kiana's resilience inspires you, and subscribe to see this family's fight unfold. Will Leonard's evidence turn the tide, or has Vance already rigged the game beyond their reach? Kiana Brooks sat hunched over a rickety motel table, the air thick with the musty scent of mildew and cheap bleach, her bandaged arm throbbing under a dim lamp that flickered like a dying pulse. The room's peeling wallpaper curled at the edges, and the hum of a busted air conditioner rattled the silence, her cracked glasses slipping down her nose as she stared at Leonard's laptop, its screen glowing with Vance's emails, a digital minefield they'd cracked open. Leonard paced behind her, his shoes scuffing the stained carpet, his broad frame tense, his voice a low growl. "We've got one shot, Kiana. We make it count." Aisha Grant perched on the bed, her locks spilling over her shoulders, her fingers tapping a burner phone. "I've got a guy, ex-NSA, he can get us in deeper." her eyes sharp as she coordinated their desperate play. Kiana's breath steadied, her fury forging into focus. "Let's burn him down." And they dove in, hacking Vance's private server, Aisha's contact guiding them through firewalls with coded whispers. "Two factors bypassed. You're in." The email spilled out, a cesspool of corruption, Vance bragging to a white supremacist donor named Hargrove. "Another black kid locked up, your money's safe." Timestamps tying him to rigged cases, Kiana's frame-up among them. Her name a taunt in his words. "She's a lesson, Hargrove, they'll all learn." Leonard's fists clenched, veins bulging. "This is it, proof he's a puppet." And Kiana nodded, her voice steel. "We take it to the feds." They bundled the files, Aisha encrypting them with a password only they knew. Freedom 23. Her smirk fierce as she hit send, the evidence rocketing to an FBI tip line, a digital grenade lobbed into Vance's world. Hours later, the courthouse erupted. Agents in Navy windbreakers swarming Vance's chambers, their boots pounding marble floors, radios crackling as they tore through drawers, seizing computers, Vance's bourbon glass shattering under a careless elbow. TV crews caught it live, helicopters buzzing overhead, the feed cutting to a stunned anchor. Breaking news, Judge Harold Vance arrested on corruption charges, and Kiana watched from the motel, her heart slamming against her ribs. A grin breaking through. "We did it, Dad, he's finished." Leonard pulled her into a hug, his laugh a rare burst. "You're brilliant, baby girl." And Aisha clapped her shoulder. "Told you we'd get him." The room electric with triumph, Kiana believing the war was won, her future clawing back from the ashes. She stepped outside, the night air cool against her skin, stars piercing the Atlanta sky, thinking she could breathe again, law school a glimmer on the horizon once more. But Vance wasn't cuffed for long, his smirk intact as Hargrove's lawyer. A slick suit with a private jet, posted bail within hours, $1 million cash, the donor's wealth a shield no Fed could pierce. Vance vanished from the precinct, slipping into a black SUV, his silver hair glinting under streetlights as he dialed Hargrove. "They've got nothing, I'm out, now break her for good." His voice a hiss, the line crackling with static. Hargrove chuckled. "My boys are ready." And by dawn, Vance resurfaced, not in jail but in a rural compound 90 miles north, a militia stronghold ringed by barbed wire and pines, men in camo cradling rifles, their eyes cold as they saluted. "Him? Welcome, Judge." He strode in, his robes swapped for a dark jacket, his jowls quivering with glee. Time to end this game. And planned his counterstrike, his arrest a minor hiccup in a war he'd never cede. That night, Kiana slept in the motel safe house, a false haven Leonard had secured, her duffel bag by the bed, her notebook open to a fresh page, scribbled with plans to rebuild. The lock clicked, a shadow slipping through, 3 militiamen in black masks, their boots silent on the carpet. Hargrove's orders clear. "Take the girl, make it hurt." They grabbed her, a gloved hand clamping her mouth, her scream muffled as they yanked her from the sheets, her glasses tumbling, her bandaged arm twisting until she gasped, pain blinding her. She kicked, nails clawing, catching one in the face, his grunt a brief victory before a fist slammed her jaw, stars exploding in her vision, blood trickling warm down her chin. They dragged her out, the motel's neon flickering as they tossed her into a van, tires screeching into the night. Leonard waking too late, his shout lost to the wind. "Kiana!" The compound loomed hours later, a squat concrete bunker under. A moonless sky, the air sharp with gasoline and pine. Kiana's wrists bound with rope that bit into her skin, her face bruised, her breath ragged as they shoved her into a chair, a laptop flickering to life. Vance's face filled the screen, his smirk a jagged scar. "Hello, little girl," his voice oily through the video call. "Thought you'd bury me." She spat blood, her glare defiant. "You're done. They've got everything." But he laughed. "I'm free, and you're not," nodding to the men. "Show her." They beat her, fists pounding her ribs, her gasps a symphony to Vance's ears, her body crumpling as she fought to stay conscious, her mind screaming for Leonard, for escape. He leaned closer to the camera. "Tell your daddy to resign, or you're dead by dawn." And the call cut, the screen black, her captors circling, one cracking his knuckles. "Your move, princess." Leonard sat in the motel, the empty bed a gut punch, his phone buzzing with a blocked number. Vance's voice seeping through. "She's mine, Brooks. Step down or she's gone." The line dead before he could respond, his scream shattering the silence. "No!" He grabbed his keys, his badge, his gun, racing to Aisha's apartment, pounding her door. "They took her. We've got to find her." Aisha stumbled out, bleary-eyed. "Where?" And he shook his head. "I don't know. But I'll tear this city apart." His voice a vow. His daughter's life the only stake left, Vance's trap a vice he couldn't break. Back at the compound, Kiana slumped in the chair, her ribs screaming, her vision blurred, but her mind churned, searching for a way out. The militia's laughter a dark chorus as they waited for her to crack. Vance's promise of death a clock ticking down. Kiana Brooks shivered in a freezing basement beneath the militia compound, the air biting with damp rot and the faint tang of motor oil, her wrists bound tight with coarse rope that gnawed into her bruised skin, her breath puffing white in the dim glow of a single bulb swinging overhead. Concrete walls loomed, slick with mold, the floor gritty under her bare feet, her torn pajamas clinging to her sweat-soaked frame, her cracked glasses lost somewhere in the chaos of her kidnapping. 3 militiamen circled her, their camo fatigues, rustling, their faces shadowed under black masks, one twirling a hunting knife, its blade catching the light as he sneered. "Judge's pet, huh? Bet you bleed like the rest." His voice a gravelly taunt, slurs dripping from his lips like venom. "You don't belong in our world, girl." Her jaw ached from the beating, blood crusting her chin, her ribs a throbbing cage, but her eyes burned with defiance, tracking their every move, waiting for a crack in their guard. How much longer could she hold out? Could courage outlast cruelty in a place like this? The tallest one leaned in, his breath sour with chew. "Vance says you're done by dawn. Better pray Daddy quits." And she spat at his boots. Her voice a rasp. "He'll never bow to you," earning a backhand that snapped her head sideways, stars bursting in her vision, pain a white-hot flare. They laughed, a jagged chorus, but she spotted it, a glint on the floor, the knife he'd dropped in his swagger, inches from her reach. She lunged, her bound hands scraping concrete, fingers closing around the hilt as she slashed the ropes, the fibers snapping, her wrists free, blood rushing back in a tingling flood. "She's loose," one roared, but she was already moving, ramming the blade into his thigh, his howl a piercing echo as he crumpled, clutching the wound, red pooling fast. The others charged, fists swinging, but she ducked, adrenaline surging. Darting for the stairs, her bare feet slipping on icy steps, their curses chasing her up into the night. The compound sprawled under a starless sky, pines clawing the darkness, barbed wire glinting like teeth, and she bolted, her lungs burning, branches snapping underfoot as she plunged into the woods, the militia's shouts fading, their flashlights, slashing the shadows too late. She ran blind, thorns tearing her legs, her arms bandage unraveling, blood seeping anew, her mind a drumbeat. Survive! Survive! Until she stumbled onto a highway, asphalt cold against her soles. Headlights, blinding as she waved, screaming, "Help!" A trucker screeched to a halt, a burly man with a grey beard leaping out. "Jesus, kid, what happened?" His voice gruff but kind as he yanked his phone, dialing 911. "Girl's hurt bad. Send someone quick." She collapsed against his rig, her knees buckling. "They're after me." Her words slurring as sirens wailed in the distance, cops and medics swarming, bundling her into an ambulance, her eyes fluttering shut. Safety a fragile thread. Back in Atlanta, Leonard Brooks stood in the motel, his resignation letter trembling in his hand, ink still wet from signing. "I, Chief Judge Leonard Brooks, hereby resign. A surrender to save her, believing Vance's threat. Step down, or she's gone." He'd faxed it to the judicial board minutes ago, his badge on the table, his career a sacrifice, his heart a hollow drum as he waited for news. Aisha beside him, her phone silent. "You didn't have to do that." Her voice tight, but he shook his head. "She's all I've got left." The TV flickered, a news break cutting in. Judge Vance's compound raided, suspect escaped. And his breath caught, hope warring with dread. "Where's Kiana?" Then his phone rang, a cop's voice crackling. "We've got her. She's a live hospital now," and he bolted, keys jangling, Aisha trailing. "She made it out?" They raced to Grady Memorial. Bursting into her room, Kiana propped on pillows, bandages fresh, her arm stitched, her face bruised but alive. "Dad," she croaked, and he dropped to his knees, hugging her. "You're safe, thank God." Tears streaking his face, her hand gripping his. "I fought back," her smile faint but fierce. Relief flooded them, their rift healed, believing the worst was past, her escape a triumph snatched from death's jaws. But Vance watched from a safe house 50 miles away, a ramshackle cabin hidden in the hills, his bourbon glass shaking in his hand, the TV showing Kiana's rescue, his jowls quivering with rage. "She got away!" Rawls called, voice shaky. They hit the compound, lost her, what now? Vance slammed the table, wood splintering. "Now we hit harder," his snarl a beast unleashed as he dialed Hargrove. "She's alive. He didn't break. Blow them up." Hargrove hesitated. "That's loud, Harold," but Vance roared, "Do it!" Hours later, Leonard drove Kiana from the hospital, her discharge papers crumpled in her lap, the night air cool through the car window, her eyes heavy but hopeful. "We can start over, Dad," and he nodded. Together. They pulled into the motel lot, the engine ticking off, when a blast ripped the air, Leonard's car exploding behind them, flames roaring skyward, shrapnel raining as he shoved her down. "Get low!" Glass shattered, the fireball scorching, the pavement missing them by inches. Her scream lost in the deafening boom, his arm shielding her as they crawled free, the motel's neon sizzling out, chaos swallowing the night. Cops swarmed, lights flashing, but Vance's laugh echoed from the safe house, his phone pressed to his ear. "Missed 'em, but they'll feel that." His glee a dark tide, the bomb a message. "I'm not done." His militia already plotting the next strike, Kiana's escape a spark he'd snuff with blood. Leonard held her tight, debris crunching underfoot, his voice a vow. "He's gone too far." And she nodded, her eyes hard. "We end this." Their survival a fragile thread against a storm that wouldn't relent. Drop a 1 in the comments if you think Kiana's escape proves she's unbreakable. Smash like if Leonard's sacrifice hits you hard. And subscribe to catch every pulse-pounding turn. Can they outrun a madman's wrath, or will Vance's next blow shatter them for good? Kiana Brooks stood trembling in the motel parking lot, the acrid stench of burning rubber and twisted metal choking the air, her bandaged arms slick with sweat as flames from Leonard's exploded car licked the night sky, casting flickering shadows across her bruised face. Shrapnel glittered on the pavement, a jagged constellation of Vance's wrath, and her bare feet stung against the hot asphalt, her torn pajamas fluttering in the wind, her cracked glasses lost forever in the chaos. Leonard crouched beside her, his suit singed, his broad hands shielding her as sirens wailed closer. Cops swarming the scene, their radios crackling with urgent shouts. "Secure the area, bomb threat!" Her ears rang, the blast's echo a hammer in her skull, but she gripped his arm, her voice a rasp. "He's insane, Dad, he won't stop." And he nodded, his eyes dark with fury. "We'll make him pay." His vow a lifeline as medics rushed in, wrapping her in a blanket, checking her pulse. "She's in shock, needs rest," but she shook them off. "I'm fine, we fight." The bombing hit the news like a thunderclap. Channels looping footage of the fireball, anchors breathless. Attempted murder rocks Atlanta, Judge Vance linked to explosion, and protests erupted nationwide, from Peachtree Street to D.C. Thousands marching, signs blazing. Vance must pay, their chance a tidal wave crashing against the system's walls. Leonard stormed the FBI field office at dawn, his resignation rescinded in the chaos, his badge flashing as he slammed Vance's hacked emails on an agent's desk. "He's a terrorist, you've got proof, move." The agent, a wiry man with a buzz cut, skimmed the files, his jaw tightening. "This is airtight, we're reopening the case." And within hours, a task force mobilized, warrants flying, Vance's name a bullseye on every screen. Kiana testified from a safe house, her voice shaking but firm, perched on a creaky cot, a mic clipped to her shirt. "He framed me, poisoned me, bombed us. He's a monster." her words streaming live to a grand jury, her bruised face a silent scream on national TV. I'm not his only victim, there are dozens, check the records. The jury indicted him by noon. Harold Vance, charged with terrorism, corruption, attempted murder. The gavels crack a sweet echo in her ears, her heart surging. We got him, Dad, as Leonard hugged her. You did this, baby girl. The next day a letter arrived, embossed with Fulton Community College's seal. Enrollment reinstated, full scholarship, we stand with you. And she clutched it, tears spilling. I'm back. Her dreams, clawing from the grave. The protests, a shield, Vance's reign crumbling, or so she thought. She stepped into her first class a week later. A lecture hall buzzing with students, her braids pulled tight, a new pair of glasses perched on her nose, her notebook crisp as she scribbled notes on constitutional law, the professor nodding. Welcome. Back, Miss Brooks, her grin wide, believing the tide had turned, justice hers at last. But Vance simmered in a plush hideout, a penthouse atop a midtown high-rise. Hargrove's money buying his freedom, $1 million bail shrugged off like pocket change, his silver hair mussed, his jowls quivering as he watched Kiana's testimony. On a muted TV, his bourbon glass sweating in his grip. They think I'm finished. He dialed a hacker, a gaunt kid named Dex, his voice a hiss. Frame her. Make her the bomber. I want her life torched. Dex hesitated. That's big, Judge. Feds are watching. But Vance snarled, triple your fee, plant it now. And Dex's fingers flew, hacking news sites, police databases, seeding fake evidence, doctored videos of Kiana planting. The bomb, timestamps fudged, her face morphed into grainy footage. Suspicious activity reported August 10th, a lie spun with digital thread. By afternoon it hit, headlines screaming, Kiana Brooks, terrorist mastermind. The fake clips viral, her scholarship photo twisted into a mugshot. New evidence ties judge's daughter to bombing, the nation turning on her, protests flipping to outrage. She fooled us all. Leonard's phone buzzed with alerts, his roar shaking the safe house. What the hell is this? As Kiana stared at the screen, her breath gone. No, that's not me. Her voice a sob, the room spinning, their victory ash in her mouth. Cops stormed the lecture hall mid-class, boots pounding hardwood. Kiana Brooks, you're under arrest. Their shouts a gut punch as they yanked her from her seat, cuffs snapping tight, her wrists bleeding anew, students filming, gasps rippling. She's a bomber? The professor stammered. Wait, there's a mistake, but they dragged her out, her notebook tumbling, pages scattering like leaves, her scream raw. I didn't do this. Cameras swarmed outside, flashes blinding, reporters shouting, Why'd you do it, Kiana? As she stumbled, her new glasses cracking on the pavement, her world collapsing again, the scholarship revoked in a terse email. Due to criminal acts, enrollment terminated, her dreams snuffed out once more. Leonard raced to the precinct, his badge useless. She's innocent, check the source, key. But the feds shrugged. Evidence is solid, Brooks, she's done. His resignation spun into proof. Crooked judge, crooked kid. Grayson's smear, now gospel. Their family a pariah. The protests silenced, Vance's hand unseen but iron. Kiana sat in a maximum security cell, the walls cold steel, her wrists raw, her pajamas swapped for an orange jumpsuit. Guards spitting slurs, terrorist trash, their boots echoing as they passed, her food tray kicked over. Bombers don't eat. Her stomach a hollow pit, her spirit fraying. I beat him once, she whispered, but the bars mocked her. The frame up a cage tighter than any jail. Vance lounged in his penthouse, a cigar smouldering, the TV looping Kiana's arrest. His chuckle a dark ripple, back where you belong. His jowls quivering with glee as he poured bourbon, ice clinking. Your daddy's next. His plot, thickening. Hargrove's voice crackling over the phone. She's buried, now finish him. And Vance nodded. Oh, I will. His eyes glinting, certain he'd crushed her beyond repair. The indictment a bump he'd smoothed with lies. His empire intact, the Brooks family a footnote he'd erase. Leonard stood outside the precinct, rain soaking his suit, his fists clenched. I'll find a way. His vow a growl as Aisha joined him, her umbrella useless. We dig deeper. There's a trail. Her voice fierce, but his eyes were distant. Kiana's arrest, a wound bleeding through. She trusted me, and Aisha gripped his arm. She still does, we fight. Their resolve a flicker in the storm, Vance's shadow a mountain they'd climb or die trying. Kiana Brooks sat shivering in a maximum security cell, the steel walls icy against her back, the air thick with the sour reek of sweat and bleach, her orange jumpsuit chafing her bruised skin, her wrists raw from cuffs that bit deeper each day. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a relentless hum that drilled into her skull. Her cracked glasses gone, her vision a blur of grey shadows, her braids matted with grime, her bare feet numb on the cold floor. Guards prowled the corridor, their boots clanging, their voices a barrage of slurs. "Terrorist scum!" One spat, kicking her tray of gruel across the cell, the mush splattering the wall. "Bombers don't deserve food." His laugh a jagged edge slicing her resolve. Her stomach gnawed itself, hunger a dull ache. But worse was the weight of the frame-up. Vance's hacker planting her as the bomber. The fake videos looping on every news channel. Her name a curse across Atlanta. Kiana Brooks, public enemy. She pressed her palms to her eyes, fighting despair. "I beat him once," her whisper a lifeline, her mind churning, plotting, refusing to break. Leonard Brooks stood outside the precinct, rain pelting his soaked suit, his broad hands clenched into fists, his badge a dull weight in his pocket as he watched cop cars roll by, their lights cutting the dusk, his daughter's arrest a wound, festering in his chest. Aisha Grant joined him, her umbrella snapping shut, her locks dripping, her voice fierce. "We've got something." Rawls slipped up, pulling her phone. His IP pinged when he called Vance, traced it to Dex, the hacker. Leonard's eyes narrowed. "That's our in." And they raced to her apartment, a cluttered walk-up on Ponce de Leon, her laptop glowing as she hacked Dex's server, her fingers flying. "Got it. Here's the original code, ties him to the—" "Fake videos." Leonard leaned in. "Proof she's innocent," his voice a growl. "We take it to the board, clear her now." They stormed the judicial board's office at dawn, a towering glass building downtown, Leonard's badge flashing as he shoved through security. "Emergency session, my daughter's framed," slamming the evidence on the chairman's desk. A balding man with a pinched face. "Check the IP, the timestamps, Vance rigged this." The chairman skimmed it, his lips thinning. "Compelling, Brooks, we'll review." And hours later a ruling flashed. Kiana Brooks cleared, charges dropped, the news breaking live. Innocent, frame-up exposed, her face a beacon. Again protests reigniting. "Free her now." Leonard burst into the precinct. "Release her, it's over." And the warden grumbled, keys jangling. "Lucky break, Brooks," unlocking her cell. Kiana stumbling out, her legs weak, her eyes. Locking with his dad, her hug fierce. "You did it." And he held her tight. "You're free, baby girl." She breathed free air, the precinct stink fading, her spirit clawing back. "He's not done, we end him." Her voice steel, Leonard nodding. "Together." Aisha handed her the hacker's data. Dex's trail leads north, Vance's. Hideout. And Kiana's eyes glinted. "I'm going after him." Grabbing a burner phone, tracing the IP to a rural spot 90 miles out, a dot on a map, her resolve a blade sharpened by rage. She slipped away that night, borrowing Tasha's beat-up sedan, the engine rattling as she drove, her bandaged arm aching, her breath fogging the windshield, the highway stretching into darkness, pines looming like sentinels. The hideout emerged, a squat cabin ringed by scrub, a faint light glowing through cracked blinds. Vance's SUV parked out front, mud-splattered, a smug relic of his escape. She parked a half-mile back, creeping through the woods, twigs snapping underfoot, her heart pounding as she neared, peering through a window. Vance sprawled in a chair, bourbon in hand, his silver hair mussed, his jowls quivering as he muttered to himself, "They'll pay." She slipped her phone out, recording, her voice a whisper. "Got you," as he ranted. "The Brooks girl's a pest. Hargrove's next hit'll finish her. I framed her once. I'll bury her deeper." His confession streaming live to Aisha's. Laptop, her friend's gasp crackling through an earpiece. "It's gold, Kiana, keep it rolling." Vance spun, sensing her, his hand snatching a pistol from the table. "Who's there?" His roar shaking the glass as he fired, the bullet, splintering wood inches from her head, her scream swallowed by the blast. She ducked, bolting inside. "You're caught, Vance." Her voice steady, the phone aloft. "It's over." And he laughed wild. "You're nothing, girl," lunging, his gun clicking empty, her kick slamming his knee, dropping him with a howl. "Not this time." Her words a snarl as she pinned him. The live feed buzzing, viewers surging. "He's confessing." Cops swarmed minutes later, lights flashing through the trees, Aisha's tip guiding them. Suspect at coordinates. Armed, their boots crashing the door. "Harold Vance, you're under arrest." They cuffed him mid-rant, his jowls red with fury. "You'll pay for this, Brooksham," as they dragged him out. Kiana stepping back, her breath heaving. Checkmate, thinking she'd won. The world watching her triumph, justice hers at last. Leonard raced up, hugging her. "You're insane but brilliant," pride in his eyes. The cabin a battlefield she'd conquered, Vance's empire dust, or so she believed. But dawn broke with a roar, the jail's gates clanging open 90. Miles south, Hargrove's militia storming in. A dozen men in black fatigues, rifles blazing, guards scattering as bullets tore through concrete. "Free the judge!" Their leader bellowed, a hulking figure with a scarred face. Smoke grenades bursting, chaos swallowing the precinct. They cut Vance's cuffs, his smirk flashing as he bolted. "Told you, Hargrove's got my back." Vanishing into a waiting truck, tires screeching as they tore off, leaving bodies and rubble, the escape a gut punch on live news. Vance freed in daring raid, the anchor's voice shaking, Kiana's victory torched in seconds. She stood frozen in the motel, Leonard beside her, the TV looping the chaos, her phone slipping. "No," her whisper a wound. "He's gone." And Leonard gripped her shoulder. "We're not done," his voice a vow, but her eyes hardened. "He's a ghost now, Dad." The militias strike a war cry, reigniting the fight. Vance's freedom a taunt they couldn't ignore, their battle far from over. Kiana Brooks crouched in a dingy motel room off Interstate 20, the air stale with cigarette smoke and desperation, her bandaged arm throbbing under a flickering bulb, her torn pajamas swapped for a borrowed hoodie, its sleeves swallowing her bruised hands. The walls peeled yellow, water stains blooming like bruises, and the TV buzzed with static looping footage of Judge Harold Vance's militia-led jailbreak, a grainy clip of masked men storming the precinct, rifles blazing, his silver hair flashing. As he vanished into a truck, suspect escaped, manhunt underway. The anchor's voice a dull drone. Leonard Brooks paced beside her, his suit jacket gone, his shirt untucked, his broad frame tense as he gripped a burner phone. "We're sitting ducks, Kiana," his voice a growl. "He's coming for us." Aisha Grant sat cross-legged on the sagging bed, her laptop glowing, her locks pulled tight. "Feds lost him, he's off-grid," her fingers tapping. "But I've got an idea. Hit his money." Kiana's eyes glinted. Hargrove's cash. "Drain it," her mind racing. The fight her only tether as sirens wailed faintly outside. The city a powder keg after Vance's escape. They hacked into Hargrove's accounts that night. Aisha's ex-NSA contact guiding them through encrypted servers. Bypassed the VPN, hit his offshore stash. His voice crackling over a secure line. Kiana's hands steady on the keys. Found. 8 millions. Her breath quickening as she siphoned funds, draining 20 million into dummy accounts. "He's broke now." Her grin fierce, Leonard nodding. "Cripple the bastard." Protests exploded nationwide. News breaking. Mystery hack targets Vance ally. The streets from Atlanta to Chicago roaring, "End the corruption." Thousands marching, horns blaring, their fury a shield Kiana clung to. "They're with us, Dad." Her voice steady, believing the tide might turn. But Hargrove felt the sting, his phone buzzing in a sleek DC office. "Funds gone, Vance. What now?" His drawl sharp. And Vance, holed up in a new safe house, a ramshackle barn 60 miles west, snarled, "They did this, finish 'em." His jowls quivering, bourbon splashing as he slammed his glass. "No more games." Aisha's phone rang. Hours later, a call from her sister checking in. But it cut to static, a crash echoing, "Aisha, they're here!" Her scream piercing before the line died, Kiana's stomach dropping. "What was that?" Leonard bolted up. "She's in trouble." And they raced to Aisha's apartment, tires screeching, the night a blur of headlights and dread. They found her car flipped on a quiet street, glass glittering across asphalt, blood streaking the hood, militia tire tracks burned into the road, Aisha's body crumpled 50 feet away, Her locks splayed, her eyes open, lifeless, a bullet through. Her chest. No! Kiana's scream raw as she fell to her knees. Aisha! Leonard pulled her back. She's gone. His voice breaking. Cops swarming. Ambush. Broadcasted. The news van already there. Filming. Attorney killed. In Vance revenge hit. The anchor's voice shaking. Kiana's sob a wound. She died for us. The TV looped it live. Aisha's death a warning. Hargrove's militia claiming it online. Cross us pay. Their video a gut punch. Kiana's resolve fraying. They're monsters. Her whisper lost in Leonard's grip. We keep fighting. His vow a lifeline, but the war grew darker. Vance's shadow a plague. Days later, the FBI cornered him, a tip pinpointing the barn, agents in tactical gear swarming. Harold Vance, surrender. Their megaphones blaring, rifles trained, helicopters buzzing overhead, the standoff live on every channel. Fugitive judge trapped. Kiana watched from the motel, her breath held. End it. Her prayer soft as Vance strode out, hands up, smirking. You've got nothing. But a glint flashed, a detonator in his fist. Not today. His laugh wild as he pressed it, the barn exploding in a fireball, flames roaring skyward, agents diving, 3 killed in the blast, shrapnel tearing flesh, the rest retreating. He's gone. The radio crackled, smoke swallowing the scene, Vance vanishing in the chaos, a ghost slipping free. Kiana's heart sank. He's unstoppable. Her voice a sob. Leonard's fist slamming the table. Damn it! The TV anchor stammering. Vance escapes again, bombing kills feds. Protests faltering, fear creeping in. Is he invincible? The nation asking, Kiana's victory a mirage torched by his madness. Hours later, they hid in a new motel, blinds drawn, the air thick with dread. Kiana's notebook open, pages blank, her spirit hollow. Aisha's gone, Dad. What now? Leonard's phone buzzed, a blocked number. Hargrove's voice seeping through, you're next. And before he could reply, tires screeched outside, militia boots pounding. They're here, Kiana shouted, grabbing her bag, Leonard yanking her toward the back door. Run! Shots rang out, glass shattering, bullets ripping drywall as they bolted into the night, her breath ragged, his hand tight on hers, a trap snapping shut. They darted through alleys, shadows twisting, her lungs burning, until a black SUV cut them off, militiamen leaping out, rifles raised. Gotcha! One grinned, scarred face gleaming, and Leonard shoved her behind him. Stay back! Pulling a gun from his waistband, firing, one dropping, blood pooling, but another lunged, slamming him down. Chief's mine! Kiana screamed, Dad! As a shot cracked, Leonard crumpling, red blooming across his chest, his gasp a wet. Choke! Run, Kiana! His last words as she froze, her world collapsing, the militia dragging her back. You're ours now, their leader snarling, Leonard's body still on the pavement, her cry a primal wail. No! Vance watched from the barn's ashes, a burner phone pressed to his ear. Hargrove reporting, He's down, she's caught. His cackle a dark tide. You lose, Brooks. His glee a venom, the militia's grip a noose, Kiana's fight a flicker in a storm that drowned her. Leonard's blood a stain she'd carry, the war raging on. Vance's terror a beast unleashed. Kiana Brooks knelt in the rain-soaked alley, her knees grinding into wet gravel, her bandaged arm slick with blood and mud, her hoodie torn as Leonard's lifeless body lay sprawled before her, his chest a crimson ruin, his dark eyes staring blankly at the storm-choked sky. The militiamen loomed, their rifles glinting under flickering streetlights, their camo fatigues dripping, their scarred leader grinning. Your daddy's gone, girl, you're next. His voice a rasp as he kicked Leonard's gun away, metal skidding across asphalt. Her scream had faded, her throat raw, her breath a shuddering gasp as she clutched his hand, still warm. Dad, no! Her whisper lost in the downpour, the world a blur without her glasses, her braids plastered to her face, despair a weight, crushing her chest. They yanked her up, her wrists twisting in their grip. Move it! Shoving her into the SUV, tires screeching as they tore off, the alley shrinking, Leonard's form a fading shadow, her fight buried with him, or so they thought. Days later, she stood at his graveside, a small plot in Oakland Cemetery, the air heavy with wet earth and grief, her borrowed black dress clinging to her frame, her arms stitched but aching, her eyes hollow as the preacher's words droned, "Ashes, to ashes," the casket lowering, a dull thud sealing him away. Protests had quieted. The city mourning, Chief Judge gunned down, headlines fading, Vance's escape a ghost haunting the news, her spirit broken. "I failed you," her whisper to the dirt, rain streaking her face, believing the war was lost, justice a lie she'd chased too long. She hid in shadows after, a fugitive in her own city, crashing in abandoned warehouses, her notebook gone, her dreams ash, scavenging food from dumpsters, her hoodie a shroud as cops hunted her. Terrorist. Suspect, the frame-up still clinging. Hargrove's militia a spectre tracking her every move, weeks blurred, her will fraying until a dying FBI agent found her, slumped in a derelict garage, his vest blood-soaked, his breath rattling. "Brooks," his voice a croak, slipping her a dossier. "Vance's donor, Hargrove. He's running. For president." Leonard's hit was to silence him, expose it. His hand falling limp, his last gasp a gift, her pulse surging. Hargrove. She tore it open, pages spilling, emails, photos, a conspiracy sprawling. Leonard's death a chess move, Vance a pawn, Hargrove's ambition the king. Presidential candidate tied to judge's crimes, her mind racing, a spark reigniting. This changes everything. She leaked it, hands trembling over a stolen laptop in a library basement, uploading to every platform, Hargrove's secret war, the dossier viral, riots erupting globally. Arrest him. Chance, shaking capitals, newsrooms scrambling. Candidate implicated in murder. The world turning, Kiana's name a whisper again. Not as a bomber, but a whistleblower. Hargrove's campaign imploding, his arrest live mid-speech. "I'm innocent." His cuffs glinting, Vance's empire collapsing, his safe house raided, his bourbon glass shattering under SWAT boots. "He's not here!" Agents shouting, his absence a taunt. Kiana's gambit a blade that cut deep. She watched from a rooftop, the city ablaze with fury, her breath fogging the night. "For you, Dad," her victory bitter. Hargrove gone, but Vance free. A ghost she'd hunt. She tracked him to his final lair, a sprawling mansion in the Georgia hills, Hargrove's last gift, its marble halls echoing as she slipped past guards, her stolen pistol heavy, her steps silent on plush rugs, the air thick with cigar smoke and bourbon's bite. Vance lounged in a study, his silver hair wild, his jowls sagging, a TV blaring Hargrove's downfall. They got him. His mutter a slur, unaware she loomed behind, her shadow stretching across his desk. "But not you." Her voice ice, his head snapping up. "You!" His hand fumbling for a gun, too slow, her barrel pressing his temple. "For Dad." Her whisper a vow, his eyes wide. "Wait. I can fix this." His plea a whimper, but she saw Leonard's blood, Aisha's body, her own scars. "No, you can't." Her finger tightening, the shot a crack splitting the silence, his body slumping, red pooling on marble, her breath steady. "It's done." She walked out, sirens wailing in the distance, her hoodie pulled low, her fate a question mark, a fugitive avenger vanishing into the night, justice hers but at a cost no one could measure, the war's end a gunshot echoing unanswered. The story of Kiana Brooks offers profound lessons about resilience, systemic injustice, and the cost of fighting for truth. Kiana's journey reveals that courage isn't just about surviving, it's about standing tall when the world tries to crush you. Her transformation from a hopeful student to a hunted avenger shows that strength grows in the darkest corners, forged by betrayal and loss. Facing relentless racial injustice, she learned that systems built to protect can become weapons against the innocent, wielded by men like Judge Harold Vance, whose power thrived on prejudice. Yet her story teaches that even one voice can spark change, as her leak of Hargrove's conspiracy toppled empires, proving persistence can crack the strongest walls. Leonard's sacrifice and Aisha's death underscore the brutal price of resistance, A reminder that justice often demands everything, family, safety, even life itself. Kiana's final act, killing Vance, blurs the line between vengeance and righteousness, forcing us to question where justice ends and retribution begins. It's a lesson in the complexity of morality. Sometimes the oppressed must become the blade to cut free. Above all, this tale warns that racism isn't just personal. It's a machine, oiled by corruption and apathy, and dismantling it takes more than hope. It takes action, sacrifice, and an unyielding will to confront evil no matter the odds. What will you take from Kiana's fight? Drop a comment with your thoughts. Hit like if her grit inspires you. Subscribe for more tales of justice and share to spread her story. Thank you for joining this journey. May you find strength to challenge the shadows in your own world.